the prospects look very good because Sharia has become mainstream. With the kind of the new Islamic revivalism in the last, recent decades, Islamic revivalism was a movement Muslims reassert their identity, their culture, their civilization, and Sharia is an important part of that. It has become mainstream because of the interest that has been increasingly taken in Sharia studies over decades, and it is still growing. I say Sharia has become mainstream. We have seen new areas of Sharia, Islamic banking and finance, halal studies, the maqasid, for example, are being studied in ways that have not been studied before. This is a kind of at the center of Islamic revivalism. In the early decades, Islamic revivalism was mainly an emotional kind of expression. But then it became, the academia took it. And since then, we have seen the substantive interest that is being developed in Sharia studies. It is also ironic that the West, just as the Sharia has become more and more mainstream, the Western critique of Sharia and the negative profiling of Sharia in Islam has also becoming more and more frequent. Like Western media and papers, they would describe Sharia and criticize it in a negative. The more they do that, they increase their reputation. The Sharia people become more curious and they read Sharia more, and you have kind of more engagement. When they criticize in that way, it touches on people's curiosity. But it is just one aspect of that. Sharia has become mainstream, I say, like nowadays. Well, in recent decades, it's become like in countries like Egypt, like other Arab countries, they revise their constitution. Pakistan, Afghanistan, Egypt, other countries, they now mention Sharia as a source of legislation in their constitutions, in their legislation. There is more of that. But Sharia is also changing. There are new issues all the time in every area I have mentioned. In Islamic banking and finance, Islamic insurance, takaful, for example, and the kind of, fatwa has become more mainstream. Tajdeed and ijtihad. Some countries started establishing separate ministries of, either law minister or minister of religious affairs and ministry of HAAWK and so on. So they take interest in Sharia more and more in new areas and new aspects of Sharia. We have seen that, for example, in Malaysia, Bank Negara Malaysia has been coming up with these ideas, like Sharia governance, for example, and giving focus. They have been revising in the area of muamalat, in banking, in finance. Some refinements take place, and that means greater engagement, like murabaha and tawarruq and bay' al-aina. They came under criticism, and this engaged, the Islamic researchers in Bank Negara Malaysia and Sharia advisors, and they come up with new ideas to reduce this, for example. They issue directives and Sharia governance framework, and that was something that engaged Bank Negara Malaysia for some years, and after that there are other new expressions that they generate fresh areas of interest relating to Sharia. What are the prospects for students, job finding, when there is more interest in Sharia in the ways that I said? That is also good news for the students. They can find jobs, they can look forward to better market realities, the Sharia. For example, some time ago, even in Malaysia, in the legal profession, we did not have the Sharia legal profession. But then it was established 3 years ago. Now the Sharia lawyers, like the bar studies, they also have a training and they become qualified, and then they become practitioners in Sharia courts. This professional aspects of the Sharia relating to legal practice, this has also developed in recent years. Then greater specialization in Sharia studies, not just in these, but in the West. However, there has been some negative developments because of this recent, since 9/11 and other difficult episodes. They are talking a lot about terrorism, about the causes of terrorism and violence. And there is, of course, this ugly phenomena exists. They are not theoretical. They are talking about adverse realities. But there are like some new areas of research, and even in teaching, terrorist studies about Islam has become like classwork and teaching subjects, and people write about it. But for us, it will be Muslim students and writers, they should take interest in the opposite of that, peace studies. Like we have been doing some work, as you're aware, with the United Nations on peace building and mediation by Muslim individuals and organizations. These are also new areas of mediation work to remove conflict, to find solutions to conflicts. And these are areas of studies that takes you to different regions in different countries, and how to find solutions to local problems in ways that uses Islamic ideas and doctrines. So these are also important areas. In international relations, there is now fresh interest in Islamic ideas of how legislation can be designed such that combine between modern studies and Islamic studies. There are new universities, Islamic universities. We didn't have 40, 50 years this kind of development, but now you have them in Pakistan and Afghanistan and Malaysia. And this is all expression of the same greater and greater interest in Sharia. As the level of interest increases, you have also better job market. Like 40, 50 years ago, I had those thoughts. Oh, will Sharia become a kind of, practical subject for you to find a worker? That is not the case now. These are interesting. Students will be taking more interest to study Sharia, and there will be more interest to research aspects of the Sharia, all sort of, new developments that you did not have before. So these are a lot of these, what we were talking about, are sort of new aspects of the Sharia. Sometimes I'm asked questions from, sometimes the finance sector, sometimes the takaful sector, sometimes even students and researchers, I'm quite well known. From outside Malaysia in the West, they ask me questions and they seem to be doing more and more of that. I know internationally that there are more PhD researchers doing research on aspects of Islam and the Sharia. This is, I think, growing. It will be, so the future is quite promising now.